Welcome to Gone Fishing, a show diving into the cybersecurity threats that surround our highly connected lives. Every human is different. Every person has unique vulnerabilities that expose them to potentially successful social engineering. On this show, we'll discuss human vulnerability and how it relates to unique individuals. I'm Connor Swalm, CEO of Security, and welcome to Gone Fishing. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Gone Fishing. I'm your host, Connor, CEO at Fin, and I am joined by the president and CEO of CloudRadial, Jeff Farris. Jeff, how are you today?
I'm great, Connor. How about yourself?
I'm doing amazing. You're just doing great? What's great about today?
It's great. Well, I have a scale. Great is like the top. Awesome, I've never ever seen. So great is really good. So
okay, I say awesome all the time. I mean, just a wonderful day to be alive. Always.
It is.
Always. So we have a really interesting topic here. The title that's been suggested is MSPs are like the UPS. And we talked a little bit about DNS just before this show started. What is DNS? I think starting there would be amazing.
Yeah. So DNS is like one of the foundations of the internet, right? I mean, it is the way we address packages around the web, right? We don't remember your IP address or all the things in between. We just need to know need to get information to Connor, or Connor at Fin Security, right? I mean, we don't have to worry about the details of that. The internet and DNS in particular take care of that. So it's basically the addressing system of the web. It makes everything familiar to people, right? So it is the address book of the web.
The address book of the web, the UPS of the web. How is it like UPS in your mind?
So like UPS, there's a lot of stuff that gets delivered, right? And packages, whether they be video packages, this webinar, whatever it is, are delivered via the web using DNS as an addressing system back and forth. And so, like UPS, the packages are being moved all the time, and traffic is immense, huge, billions and billions of records or packages flying around in any given second. And those packages, from an MSP's perspective, as long as they're delivered safely, securely, and don't interfere or inject malware or problems for end users, then for the most part, MSPs don't care what's in those packages, but they do care if the packages are delivered reliably, consistently, and don't interject other threats to their clients. So again, from an MSP perspective, they're the UPS. They make sure the packets get through, they make it through securely. Everybody's happy.
It sounds like what matters most is that the packages got sent, shipped, and delivered on time, but what was
Correct.
in them it shouldn't be of great consequence, as long as I go back to, the screens that you usually have to go through in order to ship anything, which is like, are there batteries? Is this hazardous material? It's like, as long as it's none of those.
No, and the shipping costs for the most part are pretty reasonable. I mean, they're almost free, right? Yeah. And so that injects a lot of packages in there. And occasionally you see things kind of jam up. Either the receiver can't receive packages fast enough. Sometimes the sender can't send packages fast enough. I just went through this last week ordering a Steam Deck for my son. Too many packages were arriving at one time, and the receiver can handle it, right? At least not immediately. And then things sorted out, and pretty soon the packages were flowing again, and everything was fine. And now my son is happy, right? So that was the important thing.
That makes a ton of sense. How does DNS remain secure?
So DNS is interesting because DNS is not necessarily secure by itself, but the address points to potential problems, right? And so Microsoft.com is an address, and that address we assume to be safe, and we assume people can go to Microsoft.com, packages can be delivered or received from Microsoft.com, and everybody's going to be happy about it. An MSP isn't going to care whether those packages are there or not. Now, if it's coming from, givememalware.ru, maybe that's a problem, right? And so an MSP is going to try to restrict that address. And since that's our principal way of interacting over the web is with these DNS addresses, then to a large extent, the MSP is going to try to prevent traffic to and from that site. In worst case, they may do, and from a DNS standpoint, try to block that site from ever being accessed. You see this sometimes in your browser when you type in a URL and it says this URL is blocked or has bad content or it's not secure. Those are typically, DNS. This is DNS security, where a higher level table is looking at that and saying, look, this site is safe, not safe, don't go there, right? It's like the big no trespassing sign in the front of the house, right? So again, the mailman comes to the site, comes to the house, it's got his package to be delivered, but it says, do not enter, do not trespass. Mail just moves on, is not delivered, right? And so that's DNS security in a very simplistic way, is just being able to pre-scan addresses to make sure that the destination address or the receiving address is a secure location.
Who or what, I don't know if it's a person or an entity, controls that. So you'd mentioned like there's this higher level table that says, hey, these websites are distributing malicious content. So or like malicious stuff, don't go there, block all that traffic. But these websites are cool. How is that decided? What entity
So fortunately, we don't have to worry about that if we rely on a third party, right? And so Google has some high-level grouping of sites, not always the best. Google search engine still delivers a lot of malware on a regular basis. But there are third-party providers, Scout DNS, DNS Filter, OpenDNS, Cisco umbrella, that basically maintain list of sites that they've detected through either collaborative list, through open list, or through where they've seen a problem and they're able to replicate that and shut that down to all future users. So maybe the first user had an issue, but future users don't. And so a variety of different players out there maintain these lists that basically enable that security. So most MSPs use one of these providers, and from that, they're able to basically use their intelligence to help block MS or block DNS locations from users. And so there's typically a utility that's placed or an agent that's placed on a workstation, which is a DNS filter or DNS security agent, that goes about blocking or preventing. So it'll look at the site before you go to it, see if it's authorized or not, and if it's unauthorized, block it, and if it's authorized, it'll allow it through.
Got it. What are some limitations of that, if there are any?
So the biggest limitation, again, it's not necessarily a problem, but the people that make the decisions, there's a security issue there. But the people that really care, think about UPS and the MSP being a UPS, they don't really care that what the packages contain. They care more about whether the packages are safe and delivered securely, right? From a MSP perspective, as long as that's happening, they should be happy that, it's not causing the threats to their existing user base. But the content of those sites are very interesting to the end users themselves, right? To the people that own the businesses that employ the MSPs. And the way to think about it, UPS isn't going to care if there's toys and games in a package, right? But a parent might care what toys and games are in the package that are addressed to their child, right? Some may be appropriate, inappropriate, age relevant, not age relevant. And so the parent's going to care what package is delivered to that child, and they're going to want to say to that. Now, UPS doesn't care, right? UPS doesn't care what's in the package as long as it got there safely, securely, and didn't cause any problems. And just like the MSP, they don't necessarily care about that, but the owners of that package or the owners of that business or the employers of those people receiving those packages do care. And this is what becomes very interesting in the DNS world, is especially the metadata, the sites that people are visiting is really important to the owners of the business. They're the ones that understand whether those sites are appropriate, whether they're relevant, right? I mean, so if you look at something like victoriassecret.com, maybe that's appropriate, maybe that's not appropriate, right? If you're in the fashion business, maybe that's a perfectly valid site for your employees to be going through. If you're not in the fashion business, then maybe that's an inappropriate site for your employees to be going to. From a malware perspective, it's probably not a big risk for malware. It's probably not a big risk for injecting, problems for a computer. And so the MSP, in one sense, doesn't care that that content is being delivered, but the owner of that business does. And that's where in DNS, I think, becomes really interesting in it's the meta information that it contains. And that's in trying to get that information to end users, I think, is one of the most important things an MSP can do in being able to help their users understand how their systems are being used and what their employees are doing.
That makes a ton of sense. So if the MSP's kind of utilizing these tools to make sure people aren't going to places, trying to navigate to places on the internet that could download malware, could be huge security issues. Should MSPs have more, more of a responsibility, or should that be where their responsibility ends as well? You're kind of alluding to, hey, it's not the MSP's job to determine what websites are or not allowed to go to. It's the MSP's job to just make sure wherever they're going, it is secure. Should MSPs think about going above and beyond that? Should they go into other areas of online security as well? Or what's your thoughts on that?
They're being pulled into that. Again, any MSP that's got 10 clients has 10 different views of what DNS security is, right? In the sense that of what sites are appropriate or inappropriate. And so typically in our surveys, MSPs spend a lot of time addressing tickets to open or block sites, to open or block categories. And so they spend a lot of time basically being in the business of their clients, doing the things that the clients want, but they're not really MSP related. They're user related, right? If you want victoriassecret.com, you should be able to block that or block the category. If you want it, you should be able to allow it. But the MSPs don't have the tools or haven't had the tools in order to be able to do that. And that's one of the things that at CloudRadial we're trying to address, is trying to make some of that stuff more transparent and make it more visible.
A question that I have is, does this at all overlap with mail server security, like MX server, DMARC, SPF, DKIM? Is there any reliance on DNS that MX, that like sending email and email infrastructure would typically have, or are those completely separate?
For the most part, they're separate, but the links that are in those emails or the addresses that are in those emails are typically DNS addresses, right? So anything that's got, text.text or text.com, whatever, right? All those are going to be basically DNS addresses. So the links in the mail systems are basically used a lot of times to try to cause problems, right? Because again, the block sites, the sites that have malware or inappropriate content, either way, right? I mean, from a business perspective, they don't want malware, but they don't want their employees going to sites that they don't want them to go to anyway. And so those are both security threats to the end user. They may not both be threats to the MSP. And so the typical way that DNS address is surfaced up to their employees or is either being typed in directly or responding or clicking on a link in an email. And that's why you have training, why there's so much emphasis on security training right now, is to teach people not to click links that have odd addresses, right? I mean, we spend a lot of money and time as an industry, as a country, trying to keep people from doing things that the email tells them to do, right?
Yeah. One of the most important things we always say is what matters is not necessarily where you are on the internet, but that you believe that you are where you believe you are. That makes sense. Like if you think you're on Microsoft, you had better be on Microsoft.com, because you're going to treat it the exact same way. You're going to log in with your Microsoft account. You're going to go through SSO if it's on your phone, or MFA, whatever security controls you got set up. But if you're not on Microsoft and you're doing all of that, that's when you get your credentials stolen. That's when they get harvested and abused. That's when business email compromise can come into play, because then somebody can get access to your email account, start being malicious. So I always tell people what matters most is that you are where you believe you are. So let's talk about how to identify those things. This is a subdomain. So Microsoft.randomwebaddress.com. It's like, that's not Microsoft. That is a fake website set up to make you believe you're at Microsoft. But a lot of people can't even tell the difference.
No, they can. And it is confusing. Again, they're purposely confused now, because what if you get like MicrosoftSecurity.com? Well, is that malicious or not malicious? And it doesn't help that Microsoft and other sites use some variation of the Microsoft name in there, because that's not uncommon. And this is why those lists of misbehaving URLs is so critical. And that's why DNS security is so critical, because it provides that extra level of screening, right? Again, you've got training in there is one principal way. Just don't click it. Then you've got DNS security as another form of. So if they did click it and it's a malicious URL, then hopefully they're not allowed to it. And if it is malicious and they do click on it, then hopefully you have the right, anti-malware tools on your workstation or on the workstations of your users to prevent that next level, right? So all these are escalating forms of protection, and, when they all break down, there's a real problem. But for the most part, training and DNS protection account for just a huge amount of the threats that are out there.
That makes a ton of sense. If folks listening or watching wanted to learn more about you or more about CloudRadial, where would you suggest they go to get that done?
So go to our website, www.cloudradial.com. We're introducing a product, or just introduced a product in relationship with Scout DNS, and we're reselling their product. And what we've done is we've taken their DNS filtering product and highly optimized it for user interaction. So users can block sites, open sites directly, or the owners of that business or the administrators of that business can basically manage their own DNS block list. And then they can also see the sites that their users are going to provide that first level of understanding for how their employees are using the equipment to access company resources or potentially non-company resources, right? If you want to track how many users are accessing Facebook, our implementation of Scout DNS makes that super simple to be able to see. If you want to see if people are hitting sites that are inappropriate, that's easy to see. If people are actually logging in the course of a day, it's very easy to see, right? Because again, DNS is kind of used everywhere. So if there's no DNS activity on that computer for that day, there's no activity on that computer that day, right? And so especially in a mobile workforce or remote workforce, these things are super critical to be able to just to have confidence that your employees are doing the right things at the right times in the most appropriate ways. So again, just like the MSP, if the MSP is the UPS of this scenario, then the users are the ones that are receiving and giving packages, and they're the ones that care about the contents.
Awesome. We will have links for those of you watching or listening in the show notes to CloudRadial, so you can take a look and you can reach out to Jeff and the rest of the team. Jeff, this was a blast chatting with you. Thanks so much for joining us on Gone Fishing, and hope you had a good time as well. Everyone watching or listening, thanks for being here, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Thanks, Connor.
Thanks so much for tuning in to Gone Fishing. If you want to find out more about high-quality security awareness training campaigns, how to launch them in ways that actually engage employees to change their habits, then check us out, FinSecurity, at finsec.io. That's PHINSEC.io, or click all of the wonderful links in our show notes. Thanks for fishing with me today, and we'll see you next time.